Well, good morning, everyone. This is Gabe Van Dusseldorp, and I just want to welcome everyone. We appreciate you guys. We appreciate you guys being here. We know you have we got lots of things you could be doing this morning, so we really appreciate the opportunity to visit with you a little bit, and we appreciate that you are investing in your careers and your knowledge by sitting through this webinar. So I'm just going to get right to the introduction. I know you guys, like I said, have lots of other things to be doing. Like I said, my name is Gabe Van Dusseldorp, and I am the Midwest Regional Sales Manager for Aramsco. I have been in this position for, I guess this is my first official year as this position, but I've been in the restoration industry actually it says 12 years there. It's a little over 12 years on the construction and the restoration side. There is my direct number. That's actually my cell phone, my mobile number. If you guys have any questions or you want to take a look at any of the products and you just are maybe a little, you're not sure who your rep is, please give me a call. Or if you, for some odd reason, can't get a hold of your rep, you can always give me a call as well. So that being said, I want to introduce to you my good friend who's actually going to be doing the presentation. His name is John Otero. He is the Director of Restoration Products for Legend Brands. Most of you guys will know Legend Brands actually is comprised of several different components. They have the Sapphire end, which is their truck mounts, Pro Restore, which is their chemicals, which is great products as Unsmoke and Microban, and then also ChemSpec. But then also he is the National Product Manager for Dri-Ease. I have known John for, I think, 7 or 8 years. He's a very good close friend of mine, and in my opinion, one of the best teachers in our industry. So that being said, John is going to take over from here, and he is going to educate us on restorative drying using heat when it's cold. John, it's all yours.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate your time. I know you guys are very busy, so for you to spend it with Gabe and I, we really do appreciate it, especially since some of you, I don't know if you've seen some of these record numbers from the Blizzard 16. I live in Phoenix. Honestly, it was like 75 degrees in Phoenix this past weekend. So, but man, I just can't believe how much snow was out there. These are some of the records that was around the country. I think the worst one I saw was Glengarry, West Virginia, at 42 inches of snow. That's just unbelievable. But what we're going to do today is talk about what can we do, how can we work around all this cold weather and snow and so on and so forth. So I think we're going to try to keep this at 45 minutes because we know you're busy. If you do have any questions, though, please put them in the question box or the chat box, and we'll try to visit them at the end. Right now, you're all muted because there's a lot of you on the line. So with background noise and so on and so forth, that's why we kind of muted you. But we'll try to answer the questions as we go through the process on there. So we do appreciate it. So 26 years been in the industry. For about 13 of those years, 12 of those years, I actually did the work that you're doing, restoration and cleaning. And then I was with a Aramsco Interlink group for 13 years. In the last year and a half, I've been with Legend Brands and Dri-Ease. So kind of understand the frustrations that you guys go through, especially through cold climate weathers. So some of the challenges that we meet is when it is cold and in basements and crawl spaces. Well, what about if we have like fire or mold remediation, right? What if we have flood work going on? What do we do in attics? This is kind of what we're going to discuss today, which equipment to use. What about dense materials? Hardwood floors, concrete, plaster, substrates. That's what we're also going to be covering. So what we want to do is present to you problems that you might be running into, and hopefully Gabe and I can give you solutions to those problems so that you can have a little easier job in solving the problems and making some good money while you're at it. out of all the equipment out there for the restoration industry, one of the ones that we do not use or maybe understand too much is desiccant dehumidifiers. For those who want to know the codes for the desiccant, we provided it for you, and at $2.30 a day, it's a good ROI. Because the difference between desiccants and dehumidifiers, we want to cover a little bit. And what happens is with conventional dehumidifiers, let's go with the Dri-Eaz 1200, okay? What most restorers or those who don't have as much experience is what they don't realize is once you reach a certain GPP, the efficiency of the dehus just drop tremendously, okay? So for example, once you get to about 55 grains or 53, it doesn't do anything. It's just kind of sitting there, okay? Then if you go to low grains, LGR technology, in the S500 classes, IRCRC S500 classes, the instructors usually teach at about 40 grains is when the efficiency of LGR technology drops tremendously, okay? Well, 40 grains is really not too much. And I'll give you an example. Let's just say it's 55 degrees and 55% humidity. You're at 35 grains right there. So that means the 7000, Revolution, all those, they're not doing anything, right? So it's not pulling any moisture. So that's where desiccants come into place, okay? So now we can get really into single digits where we're pulling the moisture out of the air and actually performing and working for you. So most of the time when you're in these kind of environments where dense materials, you need to get a desiccant in there. And what I hear most of the time is, well, the adjusters won't pay for it. The adjusters will pay for any material you have if you can explain to them why you're using it. For many years, I did CE classes for the insurance industry. So for adjusters and agents, we taught them of all the different kinds of equipment out there. And really the biggest complaint they have, adjusters, about the restoration industry is that we don't provide enough documentation. Give me a reason why I should pay the bill. Don't give me just an exact make code and what the readings are. Explain to me, why did we switch from using a LGR or conventional dehu to a desiccant? And I'll pay the $230 a day. Just give me a reason why, okay? And so if we explain to them that the grains coming out or in the environment is really under 40 grains, dehus aren't going to work as good, and that's the reason why we use the desiccants, because then we can pull moisture out of the air, which is going to help pull the moisture out of the materials. So we just got to give reasons why we're using a certain equipment, okay? There was an article in the R&R magazine a couple years ago from Larry Carlson that said that 3-hole desiccants often have better performance in cool and damp situations because the reactivation air has been warmed and dried in the process stage. So that's what we have for the Dri-Tech 4000i desiccant, is a 3-hole design. Well, let's go back really quick because some of us don't understand really how the desiccants work. So what happens is we get processed air, right, from the environment, goes into this large drum. It's a silica gel, okay? When we buy tennis shoes, or when our wives or girlfriends buy dress shoes or shoes in period, there's always that little packet in the box, right? Well, that's silica gel. It's trying to pull moisture out. And so what happens is this rotates very slowly. And then once it gets into the heating zone, it's heated and it releases the moisture, and that's the reactivation air that goes outside, and then the nice warm dried process air goes into the environment. One of the things about desiccants, and some of you probably have some, they last forever. It is an amazing, there's really not that much maintenance on it. You almost just have to replace the filters, but they will last for a very, very long time. We have restorers that come up to and say, we have some of your older desiccants for the last 15 years. And so they're low maintenance and they last a long time. Now, one of the reasons why, though, restorers have been a little hesitant, and Gabe, you can probably agree with this, is they've been afraid to use desiccants because it can over dry an environment. Now,
Absolutely.
Gabe, you've been in the construction world. You've probably seen that a couple times.
Absolutely. You get, shall we say, overzealous restorers that come in and they just dry and dry and dry. And unfortunately, when you're working with materials like wood floors, once they've become wet, sometimes they react to, they will release their moisture quickly or they'll release it real slowly. And if you don't know where you are as far as your RH and your grains, it can be a very dangerous thing.
Yeah. So what we did with the DryTech 4000i is, because of that concern, is we put actual humidistat points. So now you can go into an environment and actually set it and forget it. So how low do you want to go? Is it 10%, 20%, 30%, whatever you'd like in that environment, you set it. And so now you don't have to worry about, am I over going to dry anything, right? In addition, similar to the 7000 and the Revolution, we also have the I-Series, where you have the temperature of the inlet process air, the outlet temperature, and also the reactivation. So now when you go into your jobs, because all of us, we go and monitor the jobs, we get our meters, and the meters kind of take a while to acclimate. Now you just need to look at the screen and go through the menu, and it'll tell you exactly where you're at. And now you have your documentation for you. And that's one of the nice features about using the Dri-Eaz dehues, is we always have that for you. Also, what's unique about the 4000i is we have a water removal button. So what happens, and we all know this, the customers see the water turning in from a vapor to a liquid. We have this bucket, or it's going down the drain. Customers can actually see water coming out, right? So they know it's working. So with the desiccant, because we're bringing in the moist air and it's the reactivation air is going out the environment, the homeowner doesn't see how much water removal or moisture has been removed, right, from the air. So you just click on the water removal button, which is right here, and basically what it does is it takes a 24-hour period, what's going on in the environment, and combines it into an average, and that's how many pints per day is at that moment, in that moment in time, how much moisture has been removed. So it's a nice feature that is not found on other desiccants, at least in this size. The other thing we have is job and life hours. So some dehues just have life hours. We always like to have job and life hours, and here's one of the reasons why is, you know, when I was teaching the agents and adjusters, I'd ask them, do you realize homeowners turn off equipment at night? And surprisingly, they said yes, right? I was a little surprised with that, and they said, yeah, we understand homeowners, the equipment's too loud, so on and so forth. But then I shared with them that when the homeowner turns off the equipment, so Mrs. Smith, who had the flood, she turns off the equipment at 10 o'clock at night because it's just too loud. 6 o'clock in the morning, she puts it back on. That's 8 hours of downtime. Well, it takes another 8 hours, 6 to 8 hours for an evaporation process to catch up to when they turned it off. So then we explained the adjuster literally is 14 to 16 hours of unproductivity that you're paying for the equipment to sit there. Now, some of you guys will be like, yeah, that's fine with me. That's not a problem. But when you educate them, it's important to have those job hours, because the adjuster will come back and say, hey, Scott, you know, how come it's taking you so long to dry Mrs. Jones' house? Well, Mr. Adjuster, according to my documentation, Mrs. Jones has been turning it off. And now you have the job and life hour. So it's nice to have that feature, and that's why Dri-Eaz has that on their dehues as well as the desiccants. Those who have Spanish-speaking employees, we can also change the readings into Spanish, English, French, and German. So it's kind of a nice feature as well on there. So the DryTech 4000i, most losses require about 2 air changes per hour. So in other words, the DryTech will cover about 1,500 square foot in a typical house. And what is unique about the DryTech is we can actually put it on its back compared to where you can't do that on regular DHUs. And that'll cover about 3,000 square feet in a crawl space with 4-foot ceilings. And I understand that's a kind of a bigger crawl space, but kind of gives you an example of how effective or how large an area the DryTech can cover. We'll talk a little bit more about desiccant drying a little bit. Also wanted to discuss with you the Dragon 3600. I'm not sure how many guys and gals are using heat on their jobs. We'll discuss a little bit about the Dragon 3600. It is an indirect fired furnace, and the code for that is 225 per day, but that does not include the fuel surcharge that you can also add on to it. But the indirect heaters, they're designed for heat and air exchange drying. It's great for temporary drying, especially as some homes, where is it? There's a lot of states that are running into ice problems, and there's just no power. So you can easily run the generator with the Dragon, and this only runs on 9 amps. So you get some temporary heat, right? So it's a great income for you guys. And it has unwanted fumes. They stay outside on there. So here's some misconceptions, okay? So for cold weather, the desiccant isn't a very good one to use because it has very little heat. It's only 4,000 BTUs. Desiccants are best used for specialty drying, hardwood floors, stone, brick, so on and so forth. But the misconceptions of the indirect, that it makes a lot of dry air. It's the same GPP in and out, right? So the best use for indirect fire heaters are heat and air exchange and temporary heat as well, because we understand that if the environment gets too cold, your DHUs aren't working, right? So one of the problems that restorers run into is fire, smoke, or mold remediation in the winter. And what happens if the furnace is out, right? So first of all, and we understand this, it's difficult to clean in a cold structure, right? It's not fun. It's not that effective. But we also have to be careful because positive pressure can also contaminate unaffected areas. And that's something to think about, right? So in the solution regarding this, we're going to want to use the indirect fired furnace to heat the structure up. And we want to also set up negative pressure to prevent cross-contamination. So we have a kind of a picture here that we want to make sure the output CFM is slightly higher than the input CFM. And so we are using the indirect fired furnace as well as an axial fan and ducking that out. What if we use, another problem you guys might be running into is a major water loss in the winter and the furnace is out again, right? What can we do with that? Well, we all understand that it's going to be a slow process if it's real cold. But what we don't usually look at is surface temperature of the wet materials. So we're always tracking the temperature of the air, the relative humidity of the air, the GPP of the air, but guys, we really need to, especially now with the new S500 standards, surface temperature is big, is really in the S500 now is really focused. And if you have not gone through the S500, there are some changes. I'd recommend, I think it's ircrc.org. You can actually download the S500, the new standard. So if you haven't gone there, I definitely recommend it on there. Desiccants, they dry the air, but they don't add enough heat. So you definitely want to use a indirect fired furnace on there. And you set up a neutral pressure in the structure. So make sure the output CFM is the same as the input CFMs on a water loss and the furnace is out. What about if we get into a situation where there's an unheated basement or cold crawl space, which is kind of what we're running into across the East Coast right now, right? So again, if it's a cold environment, the dehues, the evaporation process is going to be real slow. So you want to add a little bit, get some heat going on there. So would we put a desiccant in this situation? The answer is no, it's a bad idea. We don't want to put the desiccant in there, but we want to is push in the dry air into that environment. Because what we have to be careful with is if we're creating too much positive pressure, that can force some contamination into the living area or the unaffected area. So we got to be a little bit careful with that. So that's not good to add positive pressure into the unaffected area. So what we want to do, as you can see here, we have, well, you guys might even be running into a little bit different situation, even a little bit colder, right? At 50 degrees and 70% humidity, we're getting in 37 grains. But now we have that axial going on, and now it's at 85 and 35% humidity and pushing out 62 grains. So it's just on how you're using some of the tools that you have in the environment. The other thing we have to realize is that, and I've been saying this for years, and Gabe has too, is you got to track the surface temperature. So when you track the surface temperature, let's say it's 50 degrees, okay, and what's nice is a lot of the meters out there like Protometer and X-Tac, or if you're using a thermal imaging camera, you're going to have surface temperature. So if it's 50 degrees, your evaporation process is just going to be real slow. So, but if you can, for every 20 degrees that you raise the temperature of the wet material, you're going to double that evaporation rate. So make sure you track surface temperature along with all the other readings when you're drying, especially in this cold environment on there. So attic drying, you're going to want to dry under negative pressure, right? Some of the methods, desiccant duct up into the space from the living area, heated ducking into space from the outside on there. And you want to prove that the system works. You got to have documentation, right? Especially not only for yourself, is the equipment that I have working? And I got to prove to the adjuster why I'm using this equipment, right? So for the indirect fired furnace, you want to compare the GPP of the input and the output, and as we all know, it should be wetter going out. And then desiccants is the process area, the grain depression on there. And again, with desiccants, we want to remove that moist air outside as well. Now, if we're dealing with dense materials, lath and plaster. So some of you, Phoenix, you're not going to run it too much. Central Phoenix, it'll get older houses. But on the West Coast, you're going to, East Coast, I'm sorry, you're going to run into a lot of more jobs that have lath and plaster. So this is where you want to use the desiccants, okay? Brick or stone, hardwood floor, stuff like that, you definitely want to use that. When you're dealing with dense materials, one of the things you have to be careful with, high heat can damage materials, right? Or heat can push water deeper into the assembly. So you want to track the moisture content, the surface temperature, the other readings on there, and make sure you're maximizing every opportunity you have. For instance, in this case here, we're using desiccants to dry out some concrete on there. Or maybe this is another way you can use hardwood floors, right? If we don't have this tenting, heat rises. So all the heat would actually come to the ceiling. What we want to do is direct the heat, or nice warm dry air, to the wet materials. Every time we heat material, it will always create evaporation. So you kind of want to get that heat to the wet material. With desiccant drying, there's different options. With the Drytec, you can have your basic setup. So the process air goes into the environment, the warm dry air goes into the environment as well, and then you have the reactivation air. Now, for those who have used desiccants, you'll realize every morning that you come and check out this ducting, you're going to have some liquid water in there, just make sure you empty that out every time you go monitor the jobs. You could also bring in some air if you like. And what's nice is on the desiccant or the Drytech 4000i, there's actually, when you open up this compartment door, it'll explain to you different ways of using it. Another way is you can actually add lay flat ducting on the process air. So if we're doing a hardwood floor, we'll tent the floor, get the rescue mats on negative pressure, so we're pulling up the moist air or the moisture from the wood, and then we're going to duct in the nice warm dry air into that environment. So there's different ways of directing that heat or the warm dry air actually on that. And then here's an example if we have a low clearance area, or using the Drytech in a crawl space, that you can put this on its back as well. So that's a nice feature to have. Desiccants can be placed inside or outside the containment. For dense materials, we want to reduce the airflow while decreasing humidity. So this is a nice example of where to use it. Now here we're using the Dragon. Now with Dry-Ease Restoration Sciences Academy, I'm not sure if you knew, the Restoration Science Academy is the largest educator. We teach over 8,000 students across the, actually international. We have the flood houses in Burlington, Washington, and Nashville. We use the Dragon during the summertime, winter, fall, and winter. It doesn't matter what time of year, we will always use the Dragon in the crawl space, because we're heating that wet material, which is creating a faster evaporation. So in the living area, that evaporation is going to be faster, and we can dry the structure faster. So it doesn't, the Dragon and the desiccant is not a wintertime only tool. This is a 24/7, 365. And if you have just a WRT certification, great. If you have an ASD certification, great. But if you haven't been to an ASD in the last 2 years, I'd recommend it. Also, I'd highly probably recommend doing an ASD again, just because of all the changes from the S500. There's a lot of changes going on. So if you haven't planned and budgeted for 2016 education, I budget to go to some classes. What is a nice kind of the, when you go to the Burlington, Washington ASD structure or flood house in Burlington, that's where we actually manufacture Dry-Ease dehues and air movers and so on and so forth. And we'll actually give you a tour of that, of the Dry-Ease facility, the manufacturing, which is really, really cool. Anyway, for additional information on that, restorationsciencesacademy.com, or you can email me, and I'll give you the email later of when the classes are. Finish off real quick with the Dragon 3600. The Dragon part number is Dragon 3600, which is also the retail price, 3600. So it's kind of easy for me to remember how much it is. But it is 120,000 BTUs at 700 CFM. And I know there's other heaters out there. Some of them retail at 2,100, 2,300. But the BTUs on them are anywhere from 10,000 to 20,000 BTUs. We're giving you 120,000 BTUs on there. This also has a 32-gallon tank capacity. Now, the reason I tell you that is a lot of indirect heaters out there that if you're looking to rent them or buy, they're usually 10 to 17 gallons. Ours is a 32-gallon tank capacity, which would run you about 36-hour run time. 36-hour run time. We're at about 0.80 gallons of fuel consumption, and at 9 amps. You know, if you don't have power, you know, in the neighborhood or anything, and you got at least a small generator, get that going with the Dragon. Get some temporary heat for your client or for yourself, and it works out really good. There is a thermostat, so if you want to set the temperature at different ranges, you can start off from 70 degrees all the way to 105 degrees. There's really no reason to go above that 105 degrees. It's just one, a lot. Most of your DUs aren't going to work, just too hot. As well as where we set the thermostat to go over, so it won't go over 105 to be in the RIA safe harbor clause. For those who are in higher altitudes, let's say Denver or even Arizona, we go up to 12,000 feet elevation. There's an easy altitude adjustment on there. Instead of going into the whole compartment, it's easy to adjust that. We also have a rain and snow guard. So if it's raining or snowing during the job, we can protect it, and you don't have to worry about that on there for you. It also, when it starts, it's got intelligent sensors. So a lot of safety features on that, but also even when you put it on, the blower won't start until it gets to about 80 degrees, and then boom, it'll start pushing in the nice warm dry air, especially if it's real cold. Why would you want to push in cold air? So it won't start pushing the air until it's a lot warmer, so that's a nice feature on there. I did want to, before I announce, I wanted to announce the winner of the Dri-Ease Velo Air Mover. We had put into the advertisement that for those of you who attend this webinar, will win a Dri-Ease Velo Air Mover, and that winner is David Wack. So David, congratulations on that. We know that we went through a lot of information in a very short period of time, but we don't want to go too long just because there's a lot of you guys are real busy, especially with what's going on the East Coast. Gabe, is there anything that I kind of missed or you'd like to recover or anything like that?
No, the only thing that I would say that just to re-highlight is just the options for the desiccant. I know you talked about it briefly, but with desiccants, they are not strictly for cold weather climates. I know John mentioned that, but I was actually just talking to one of our sales reps today. If you are in areas that have lower GPP, your grains per pound, you need to add a desiccant. An example of how versatile desiccants are, I used to work with the training facility in Phoenix, and there was some rumbling of, oh, you know, desiccants only work in the winter. So we took that as a challenge, and it was a hot July day. We actually brought in a desiccant, and what we ended up doing is taking the output of our air conditioner, the central air in our house, running that directly into our desiccant, and then using that air to dry with. So, and it worked great. We had the house dry in 3 days, like we promised. So just wanted to highlight the fact that a desiccant can be used any day, all day. Once again, though, you just have to justify the use of it.
That's absolutely. That's great information. We have restorers in Florida actually use desiccants during the summertime. So you're right. And all these this equipment we kind of wanted to cover is just another tool in the toolbox, right? There's other tools out there, but we wanted to explain some of the new technology, especially with desiccants, in that you don't need to worry about over drying any environment now with the features that we have on there. So if they're interested in purchasing some equipment, Gabe, where do they call and who do they contact, and from there?
Yes. So the best way for that is if you're interested in either the Dri-Tech or the Dragon, or frankly any other Dri-Ease equipment. Aramsco is the largest purchaser of Dri-Ease equipment out there, and we move a lot of it. So if you know who your Aramsco or Interlink sales rep is, feel free to call them directly. If you don't, and you'd like more information, my information there is on the screen, there, gabev@aramsco.com. Please shoot me an email. I'm on the road a lot, but I happen to be at my home office all week this week. So please shoot me an information, even if you just have questions, and I'd love to chat about it. both John and I say this lovingly, we're both nerds of this industry. So if you'd like to call and just chat about some of the stuff you saw, we'd love to do that. And then also a reminder, my phone number is at the beginning, and you don't need to go back, John. I'll just say it again. My direct mobile number is 480-338-2596. So if you want to have questions, please let me know, and we'll get you taken care of. We have offices. I think we have 42 offices nationwide now. Ramsco does. So it doesn't matter where you are. We can have equipment to you quick.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, Aramsco rocks. You guys are doing just a fabulous job. David Wack, congratulations on winning the Velo Air Mover. If you can email me your contact information, David, I will get that out and shipped out to you because you probably need it because you're probably busy with work. But I don't see any questions, and which is, to me, Gabe, it must be either we must have answered all of them when we were doing this presentation, so that's a great thing. If you do have any questions, email either Gabe or myself. We'll get those answered for you. We'll also email you a recording of this presentation in case you want to go over it with your technicians at a future date. So, Gabe, I appreciate your time. Thanks for having me on this webinar.
Thank you, John. I know you're a busy, busy man, and for us to extrapolate some of your wisdom and knowledge is a huge benefit for our clientele. So thank you very much.
All right, guys. Have a great week. Stay warm, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.